New horror story. I've been broadcasting from the afterlife. I've been hosting the overnight shift at WRAITH 101.3 for 6 years now. It's a small independent station that specializes in horror content. Classic monster movies, urban legends, ghost stories. My show, Midnight Tales, runs from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., and I've built up a loyal following of night owls and insomniacs who love scary stories. Halloween night is always our biggest show of the year. I plan weeks in advance, collecting the creepiest stories I can find and setting up special sound effects. This year, I decided to do something different. Instead of just reading stories, I was going to take live calls and let listeners share their own paranormal experiences. The show started normally. I opened with my usual intro, played some atmospheric music, and announced that the phone lines were open for real ghost stories. The first few callers shared typical stuff. Strange noises in old houses, glimpses of figures in their peripheral vision, the usual fare. But around 1 a.m., I got a call that made me uncomfortable. An elderly woman with a slight southern accent claimed to have been listening to my show for a very long time. When I asked for her ghost story, she described a tale about a radio DJ who didn't know he was dead. According to her story, this DJ had been hosting his overnight show for years, talking to all his loyal listeners, playing his music, telling his stories. But what he didn't realize was that he died in a car accident 3 years ago, driving home from the station on a foggy Halloween night. The story was creative, but something about her delivery made my skin crawl. When I asked what happened to him, she explained that he was still on the air, broadcasting from beyond the grave every night. His listeners didn't know, of course, because the dead can be very convincing when they want to be. I was about to respond when the line went dead. The next caller was a man with a deep, gravelly voice who claimed he needed to tell me about my accident. He described Halloween night 2021 when I was supposedly driving home around 7 a.m. after my show. According to him, thick fog had reduced visibility to 10 feet, and I'd hit a tree on Highway 9 just past the old Miller farm. My hands started shaking. I did remember fog that morning, but I'd made it home safely. When I protested that he had me confused with someone else, he suggested I check my records and asked when I'd last actually left the station or gone home. I hung up and tried to think. When had I last been home? I lived in a small apartment across town, but I couldn't remember the last time I'd actually been there. I'd been so focused on the show, so dedicated to my work. The phone rang again. A young girl explained that her mother had been recording my show for 3 years and noticed I kept saying the same things, playing the same music, telling the same stories repeatedly. She thought I was stuck in a loop. I hung up and checked my show logs. According to my notes, every show I'd done for the past 3 years was identical. Same opening music, same stories, same commercial breaks. How was that possible? More calls came in, all from people claiming to know about my death. They described the accident in perfect detail. The fog, the tree, the way my car had wrapped around the oak trunk just after sunrise on November 1st, 2021. But I felt alive. I could touch things, move around the studio, see my reflection in the window. During a commercial break, I tried to leave the studio to get some air, but the door wouldn't open. I pulled harder, but it was like the handle was part of the wall. I tried the emergency exit, but it was the same thing. I was trapped in the radio station. At 3:33 a.m., my phone system lit up with dozens of incoming calls simultaneously. I answered one at random and heard my own voice, but slightly different. The voice claimed to be me, the real me, the one who died 3 years ago. When I protested that it was impossible, the voice explained that I was a ghost, a phantom broadcast that started the night I died and never stopped. Every Halloween I got stronger, more real, but I was still dead. I looked at my hands. They looked solid, but when I held them up to the light, I could see through them slightly. The voice continued, explaining that I'd been broadcasting to the living world from the spirit realm. My listeners thought they were hearing a normal radio show, but they were actually receiving transmissions from beyond the grave. When I mentioned remembering being alive, remembering my life and job, the voice noted that ghosts often retain memories of their previous existence to help them feel connected to the world they've lost. I walked to the window and looked out at the parking lot. My car was there, but it was crushed and twisted, wrapped around the base of an oak tree that had somehow grown right through the asphalt. The voice explained that the station was a pocket dimension where my consciousness got trapped when I died, I'd been repeating the same Halloween broadcast for 3 years, trying to connect with the living world. When I asked what would happen if I stopped, the voice said I would move on and find peace, but my listeners would lose their connection to me forever. If I stayed, I would remain trapped forever as a ghost in the machine, broadcasting from beyond, but never truly alive again. The phone rang one more time. This call was different. It was my mother, who died when I was a child. I could see her now, standing in the studio doorway that had been locked just moments before. Behind her were other figures. Relatives, friends, even some of my former listeners who had passed away over the years. She told me it was time to come home, explaining that while my show had been wonderful, I'd been hiding from death long enough. I looked at my broadcast equipment one last time. On the monitors, I could see messages from listeners all over the country, people who'd grown to love the voice that spoke to them through the long, dark hours of the night. When I asked if they'd be okay without me, my mother assured me they would remember me. The best ghost stories are the ones that stay with us forever. I walked toward the door, and as I did, I felt myself becoming lighter, more translucent. I made one final announcement, thanking my listeners for all these years and explaining this was my last broadcast. I reminded them that the best stories never really end. They just wait for someone new to tell them. I switched off the transmitter and followed my mother into the light. The next morning, the station manager found the studio empty except for a note on my desk, thanking them for 3 wonderful years and stating that the show must go on. They never found my body, and technically, I'm still listed as missing. But if you tune into WRAITH 101.3 on Halloween night, you might still hear echoes of my voice in the static between stations, telling stories to anyone brave enough to listen in the dark. Some broadcasts, it turns out, are too good to die. Thank you for listening. If you really like the story, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more daily horror stories. Thanks.